What if I told you you could drop 100k easily without over-reliance on buffers? Well, let me show you a exceptionally powerful build that I have dubbed the Star Child build. So I am going to use Cassia as a grand strategist just to set up a one-turn, but this is a build that is not reliant on buffers and is entirely self-sufficient. The main gimmick of this build comes online in Act 3 because it requires an Act 3 item. However, this is a very usable and playable build from Act 1. In Act 1, it is a very good range damage build with an arc rifle. In Act 2, it gets a massive power creep with the Sanctified Staff. And then in Act 3, you just enter God mode. So what I'm going to do to show this setup, as you can see, all I have done is applied Cassia's buffs to my character, and I'm just going to group up a bunch of enemies here. There's no excessive buff loops, there's no psi rating stacking, there's no Argenta stacking, there's no need to stack damage items, there's no need to stack anything like Pascal to do it, there's no weird glitches or animation loops or turn loops that you need to do. Straight up, all you need to do is let this guy shoot. That's all he has to do to set up himself is shoot. So I'm going to give some basic buffs. I'll show his stats. Like I said, we're not turbocharging this buff. I'm not using 50 Cassia buffs. I have literally just applied 2 navigator buffs and 2 officer buffs. I've put up a little bit of momentum just to get us back to basic momentum because I started negative for this encounter. This is the Shrine World at the start of Act 4. The build itself I'm showing is at level 55, but the other allies are at level 48, and like I said, this does come on online much sooner, but this is just to show off some things here. So you can very easily use this as with Warp Surge Brooch and Spirit Drape as well to do it. But as you can see, Cassia gives him some pretty nice buffs. But let's see what happens when I fire a shot at these enemies. So I first am going to apply my Master Tactician buffs to myself because this is a Soldier Master Tactician Sanctic Psyker build. And if allies attack first, you can also get pretty much a free looped attack with Finish the Job. And there's a lot of attack looping you can do, but that's not what I'm going to show in this little clip here. So we're going to activate Further. With Further, we will actually boost our intelligence. Even more importantly, this is a voidborn Be Smart build. I know how much some people love that. But as you can see here, nothing too crazy on stats. Low hundreds. So I'm going to drop a Hammer of the Emperor just to make sure I get some kills here. But watch what happens when I shoot and kill these guys. So they all explode, going up to 700 damage on the first shot. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. But let's see what happens to our stats after we look at that and look at the state of our HP. Notice we now have 700 intelligence and 200 ballistic skill. The more enemies you shoot, the more ballistic skill you gain because of Masterful Display, which will then boost our Psycho powers, and the more stacks of tactical advantage we have, the more we'll gain from that. We can also stack agility to the moon with some other setups, but now let's finest out because this was from a Bring It Down. If I have the Spirit Drape, I can make all my powers free, and if I have Warp Surge Brooch for my main turn, I can have Psyker a base number of attacks. So I've already pretty much cleared the map with this. The problem with this build is even setting itself up, it will still actually clear the map and kill most enemies, which is kind of funny. I'm going to apply a second round of my own buffs, and then I'm going to commit Further just to get my stacks of tactical advantage up. I'm going to just put on some little bit of my Shield of the Emperor. I'm going to use Firearm Mastery just to generate some AP, because this build does generate AP, so look, there you go, 10 AP there. So just going to shoot these guys because killing them, and notice how big that arc rifle jumped to do 1200 shock damage to that Chaos Marine. That was raw damage. That was obviously not being boosted by anything like Pascal, Argenta, and neither that or even degraded defense. So I'm going to pop Hammer of the Emperor, and I'm going to swap over to the Sanctified Staff. Let's see how much potential damage we can then drop on this Hellbrute. And as you can see, my stats have now gone over to 1000 intelligence, which is all self-buffing. Most of that list skill, all self-buffing, and I have 292 resolve. And I've not even used a lot of resolve stacking. I don't even think I have personal oversight on Cassia just yet, because she gets that later in the build. Now, I could easily drop a 50k nuke here, or I could drop a 50k nuke on the Hellbrute. But with the way I've set up for backdraft and pain channeling, that 50k is actually going to be a lot more than that. So I haven't even set up for the press advantage stuff because I'm using the Malpian Shroud. You could easily set it up so you could have the onslaught amulet, so press the advantage does less, and that way you get more stacks with this. So as you're taking more attacks, you can keep out more damage. So your Inspire will constantly keep up and do more damage. But for an impressive one-turn shot, yeah, let's have a look at what we're going to do here. So Rack and Ruin is also applied, and we're getting ready for it. Can you feel it coming? Boom. 40k damage there. Now, Sanctified Staff has a really big range, so potentially between 5,000 and 53,000. What it's done is it's dropped 40,372 damage. What that means is any secondary targets would have taken 20,186 damage, and because of pain channeling, it will actually send excess damage over, which in this case was 39,620. So that was 100,178 damage from a single attack, which at the time did not have joint analysis up, did not have Litany of Hatred up, did not have stacked Psyker buffs, it did not have any Idra buffs. It was just what it was going to do. And now he's just going to keep casually for every attack for 1 AP for the rest of the round, just constantly drop 1 AP 40k nukes, and he can make 9 of those. So that is another 9 attacks that he can make that can potentially each also do 40k. Actually, no, even more than that. I could drop 10 of those because I have 10 AP, because, wow. So yes, we can do another 400k if we wanted. So potentially this build is going to be able to do over 500k a turn, and of course you've got pain channeling, you've got backdrafts, so it could even be more than that. With if you could potentially do raw damage for that first one, potentially doing 53k, 10 more attacks doing 40k, so that's 450k. Another half of that could be backdraft, so that goes up to something ridiculous in the 600k damage, and because everything pain channels overwards, you're going to be going upwards of 600k in a single turn. There is not a single encounter that can possibly survive this. The amount of damage that this can do in a round, and it was all set up just from a bring it down. And like I said, with Spirit Drape up as well, all your Psycho powers would be 0 AP, and even if you weren't using Finest Hour, on your main turn you would have psi rating number of attacks. This is probably the strongest build in the game. So let's get in and let's talk about the Star Child and how my ultimate build works that is not reliant on buffers. And if you then throw in buffers, then yeah, you're probably going to crack 1,000,000 damage easily if there was something that could even survive you doing map-wide 1,000,000 damage. Hello everyone, Revan619 here. Welcome to my testing save. Let's talk about some crazy things on here, and let's talk about some biz items for the Star Child build. Now, this build I have designed to do the most possible damage with the least possible work. I am not a fan of Wrath of the Righteous buff loops, so that's why I don't excessively buff. And when we're on that, let's talk about some items here. Now, as you gain intelligence, you will actually gain extra armor from the Breacher's armor, and you could even use this with the Warrior's armor. I'm just using this for aesthetics and to get the little perception. And as your intelligence goes up, so will your armor. In the encounter I just showed there, I think I got over 600 armor. Because this is a mercenary, I didn't even have all the benefits that is actually being seen on my Rogue Trader. He will also have stuff like deflection coming in from Frontier, and a lot of other things, and his stats will actually be naturally higher because you get a lot of buffs that will come in to increase all your things here, as well as even boosting your skills on intelligence, all from a lot of the Rogue Trader buffs, which none of these are currently being applied to this mercenary because obviously he's the mercenary and not the Rogue Trader. So naturally this will all be much stronger in your build. Now, if you're not buff stacking, items like Grimoire of the Void aren't actually that much use to you, because if I'm not buffing my willpower, which I don't really use willpower for the damage on this build, this isn't really coming into effect. So this is a very good candidate to drop out for Spirit Drape. Spirit Drape will, on the first round of combat during your main turn and extra turns, allow all your Psychic powers to be free, which makes it a lot easier for you to self-buff and set up. The other item I have here is the Long Range Aim Lens. So this will increase your range attacks based on your Psychic powers, sorry, not your Psychic powers, based on your Ballistic skill. As you get shots off with your Arc Rifle, when it does secondary target damage, you will increase your Ballistic skill, which will increase your range, and as you increase your intelligence, it will increase the rate at and the distance that your arcs can jump. So every shot, your intelligence and your Ballistic skill will rapidly jump. We'll talk about why, But if you don't need to be shooting that far, you could swap this over to the Warp Surge Brooch so you make a lot of attacks, but this will only be during your main turn and not extra turns. This build is actually set up with Fire Within to refresh extra attacks, and you also have you can turn infinite AP into attacks with some of the arc rifle talents, but I don't take that till the end game because well, I'm not using it till then. So early on you might go Warp Surge Brooch, and then you might eventually swap over to long range aim lens. Now towards the end, every second Psyker power that you use will get boost from Abyssal Conduit, but if you are not really boosting willpower, Marksman's Braces are going to be a little bit better here. Now, as you notice, I have the Malpian Shroud and the Invigorating Resolve on. The reason for this is all staff attacks count as, the powers that is, count as melee attacks. This is for items, this is for abilities, and this is for talents. So Invigorating Resolve, which as you gain Resolve and temporary HP, and as you get that, you'll actually increase damage with Malpian Shroud. One of the DLC bosses, when you beat the Crypt fight on DLC 1, you will get a massive temporary HP boost that comes from the moment you use a heroic act. So when on this build, you will easily build health into the thousands, which will be massive increases. So yes, exceptionally powerful. Now you could use something like the Blitz Boots because it counts as a melee attack, so that will give you like a +4 boost. For me, it's more important to get the extra AP for Caligate of St. Keith. I take talents that when you have high momentum, it decreases the cost of your area attacks, so your Psyker power attacks for the Sanctified Staff will only be 1 AP, so that way you can make a lot more attacks on this build. Early on, I like to use the Warmonger Boots because what this does is a lot of people don't realise that it actually works slightly different to how it is. Basically, whenever you kill 2 or more enemies with a single attack, it says it does not spend all the wearer's MP. For some reason, this actually generates MP. Don't know if it's a glitch or if the one's wrong, but yeah, often it's refreshed my MP after I've made kills. Because this is a mercenary, I only have Dogmatic 1, so the Eyes of Joyce could potentially give me +5 Psi rating, so again, this would make the build a lot stronger on the actual Rogue Trader. So everything you saw me do, when you saw him in a single attack do 100k damage, and then he still had 10 more attacks to do, yeah, again, this is the weakest possible version of the build because it is on a mercenary, not the Rogue Trader. So you can understand how much damage potential this build has and just how crazy it can get to. And like I said, this build is usable with an Arc Rifle and a Psyker Staff in Act 1. As you get the Alpha's Arc Rifle in Act 2, you will see a massive arc benefit increase, and you'll also get the Sanctified Staff as soon as you get to Footfall. And this scales its damage from just the Psyker's, the Psyker's Resolve is the staff power, and it will times that for your attack from your Psi rating. So it's just Psi rating with Resolve that uses to do this. So for Cassia, or whatever grand strategy you take, you'll want personal oversight, so their bust will boost your Resolve, and that will give you exceptional early game damage. This is a Voidborn Be Smart build, so we use intelligence for everything. There are also other augments that you can get that can increase your damages based on your lore skills, which is exceptionally powerful. What is actually keeping this and what is sponsoring all of this damage is actually this item here called the Cerebral Inverter MK Tactician. So the first stack we don't care about. So the user's weapon damage is calculated using intelligence instead of strength, and ballistic skill instead of weapon skill if those characteristics are higher. We don't care about that bit. What we care is the user gains number of tactical advantage stacks of intelligence. So per stacks of tactical advantage, we actually boost our intelligence. We then use that to increase our resolve, which is coming in from Be Smart. I didn't show it off here, but we actually have the weaponizer MK2, which we could have galvanized to gain all of these effects for extra arm penetration, extra over penetration, extra dodge reduction, extra parry reduction, deflection negation, and we could have even put on negative effects. One of the other things that I had in here was the Hand of the Righteous, which deals penance. So what this does is every attack adds a stack of penance, and what that does is it does dogmatic rank times stacks, and it lowers all enemy stats by that, so you can actually cripple the map with it. Now, one of the reasons why I was originally using the MK Soldier was if you shoot at the target within 3 cells, you'll actually make a burst fire attack with this, which will rapidly boost your agility via the alacrity, because every attack that you make gives you massive boost to your agility, so that means your Reverend Salter and Swift Salter will increase your damage a lot. The only issue here is once you start building up to map clear and you start hitting the entire map every single shot, even though you do 0 damage to allies, the fact that you crit allies will cause your focal emitter to start rapidly bursting allies, and with all your boosted stats you will one-shot all of your party, which will cripple your resolve, which is why I do go away from the focal emitter, because obviously you start killing allies. But I just pick up the Road Trader's Monocular because towards the end you'll just be standing near allies and you'll be getting passive boosts from being near allies for both camaraderie and for the Road Trader's Monocular. So let's talk about some progression for this build. The first rank we get Medicaid because we want to be able to use Medicaid kits, and it just makes us a more self-sufficient member of the party. It's important that we get rapid reload to lower the cost of reloading by 2, because the arc rifle costs 4 AP to reload and it only has 4 shots, so you will early game be reloading a lot. We get ballistic skill because we're going to be shooting quite a bit early on, and be smart. This changes our fellowship to be scaled by intelligence for all things. Intelligence just straight up replaces fellowship if it's higher. Rank 6 we get pyromancy in here while still progressing ballistic skill. The reason for this is we're going to be getting passives from here. We won't actually really ever use ignite. One of the other things to keep in note is if you want to see the full spreadsheet and the suggestions, I have that in the description below, and this build is on there under the Star Child, but this is going to be to explain why things are here so you understand how to play it, so I wouldn't suggest just skipping this to go straight to there. Rank 7 we start boosting intelligence. The reason we're boosting intelligence is this will actually increase our arc rifle, so it increases the damage of the arc rifle and it will increase the distance of it, and it makes it a little bit easier to set up once we start going into the Master Tactician stuff in Act 3. At rank 8 we get backdraft, so this means whenever a Psyker power used by a Psyker deals damage, a random enemy within 2 cells from the initial target suffers half the damage. That damage does not trigger this talent again, but it means that if you do say 100 damage to one enemy, a second enemy nearby will get 50. In the case of this build, you saw me earlier do 40k, so that means the second target gets 20k. So and when you're doing 50k, and it would then do 25k. So it does scale quite nicely with this build. I go into awareness because it's one of those skills to cover, and it's quite useful for that solo bit. First one I get is Firearm Mastery 1, so until the end of soldier's turn they get 4 MP and their attacks do not spend MP. This is useful when you're using your arc rifle because it will give you 2-3 attacks in your arc rifle, and those arc rifle attacks can actually refund attacks, and it can also trigger extra refund attacks with fire within. So being able to move between shots so you can just have line of sight is going to be very useful, and you will be covering the map with these bursts, so things will die quite quickly. Often you won't even pull out the Sanctified Staff because of how often your arc rifle will just end the encounter. Pick up Second Sight because yes, you want to scale the distance of your powers based on your perception, because like I said, things start dying so quickly it becomes harder and harder to be able to even hit things. So yeah, we go into perception as well. We pick up telepathy, and again we only just take a single rank into this ability, and that's just going to be to get one of the passives. So we get awareness, we take perception. I start taking overclocking module, which means that our intelligence will scale the distance of the jump of the arc rifles, which is going to be very useful because it's going to do that from the intelligence bonus. And at the next level I pick up pain channeling, so that means that whenever this player kills an enemy with a psychic power dealing more damage than the target's wounds, the excess damage will be dealt to the closest target. You will wipe out part of the map very quickly with this. And then I take Liturgy of Installation, so if allies become the secondary targets of the character's arc rifle, they do not suffer damage. Now, I don't even need to get Echo Pulse early or even Residual Charge, because you'll be getting so many extra attacks anyway with this build, and you'll also be just, yeah, enemies won't survive for Echo to even take part, so that's why we don't need to prioritize those. I then go into Psycho Majoris, because we're going to need to get that up, because that's going to be where most of a lot of our stuff is scaling. It's going to be Psi rating, and I pick up Law Warp, because we can't pick up Law Imperium yet, but it's always good just to be able to have a stat that your other allies can't cover. And Firearm Mastery 3, so it makes our attacks harder to dodge, and it gets extra arm penetration, so this is quite useful for the arc rifles. When you get to Footfall in Act 2, you'll be able to buy the Sanctified Staff immediately, which is your endgame weapon, and like I said, it scales from Resolve and from your Psi rating only. That's why it's so powerful. The way that this works is Tactical Advantage. The Master Tactician gains a special Tactical Advantage effect that allows them to empower their attacks. They gain 1 stack of this effect for every 5 momentum gained by themselves or their allies. The Master Tactician begins combat with a number of Tactical Advantage stacks equal to their Fel bonus, or in our case, our Intelligence bonus. Press the Advantage. What this does, the Master Tactician empowers their next attack to deal 4% additional damage for every stack of Tactical Advantages the Master Tactician has, and it loses half of their stacks of tactical advantage. This does go up to 999. There is an item that you can use a quarter of it, so instead of going down to like 500, you'll be in the 700 range. However, the Onslaught Amulet just isn't worth taking over the Invigorating Resolve and the Malpian Shroud, because the Malpian Shroud could be adding an extra 1,000 here, whereas this will be adding less, because obviously 400 times 4% is going to normally work out to be less than that. We do take in Linchpin. So yes, so the target ally or the Master Tactician gains 1 resolve for every 5 stacks tactical advantage the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half of their stacks tactical advantage round up. This affects stacks and lasts until the beginning of the end of combat. Until the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn, the Master Tactician gains a stack of tactical advantage equal to 28% of all momentum the target gains, instead of the usual 20%. So useful to start building up that resolve. Linchpin now only spends a quarter of the tactical advantage stacks instead of a half. Then Orchestrate Firestorm is something that we can use on this, but we won't be using that much. Rank 5 gets us an AP increase and we start going into Ballistic Skill, and then we take talents like Joint Offenses. The Master Tactician gets a stack of tactical advantage for every hit we score, and because of the overshots of the Arc Rifle, we'll be building up a lot there. We get Inspire, so the target gains 5% damage and 5% additional damage for every 10 stacks of tactical advantage the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half their stacks. If the target uses a heroic act before the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn, they get plus 25 momentum, which is also again quite useful. And the upgrade, the Unwavering Motivation, the target of Inspire gains 5% additional damage for every 10 stacks of tactical advantage until the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn. So yeah, more buffs coming into that. We get some Awareness, Intelligence, and like I said, Fire Within. So for every 8 creatures killed or critical hits, we get a 0 AP attack that doesn't count towards our attack limit, so that's super useful. Hidden Advantage, our abilities work as if we have 8 more stacks of tactical advantage. Even bear with this, as we increase our intelligence, it's actually going to count based on that instead, so we'll be gaining a lot more based on our intelligence score. Get Awareness, more intelligence, take Orchestrated Firestorm 2, so we can use burst shots or area attacks if they have that. Funny enough, Cassia will use Lidless Stare if you have upgrade 3, which is pretty nice. I take Personal Involvement, so every enemy killed by the Master Tactician increases Master Tactician's resolve by 1 until the end of combat. If you go to the arena fight in Act 3, where you fight multiple waves of enemies, this talent is a bit of an MVP in there, so it's good to get this in Act 2. More Law Warp and Intelligence, Psyker Terminus to start increasing everything. Then Shield of the Emperor, this is going to be very good, so allies under the effect of our Word of the Emperor, which gives us more resolve every time we cast it. Yeah, this will give our allies a lot of defense, and because of all the scaling that we're going to see coming in here, and because this comes up from allies resolve as well as the deflection, yeah, our armor is going to be through the goddamn roof. Then get Against All Odds, Master Tactician begins combat equal to additional stacks tactical advantage equal to the number of enemies, so it's a good boost there. More Perception, more Law Warp. Dawn Victory is going to be good. Every critical hit scored by the Master Tactician grants them momentum equal to resolve divided by 2, workups to 3 times per turn. So yeah, this is going to be incredibly useful for Invigorating Resolve and the Malpian Shroud. And then once you have the DLC 1 effect when you use Heroics to get even more temp wounds, yeah, Malpian Shroud is going to cause your Sanctified Staff to have over 1,000 damage percentage increase to what you're doing there. More Perception, Psycho Extremist, because obviously Siren is going to be very important. And then we take Orchestrate Firestorm 2, so this way we can use it multiple times per turn. Yeah, as soon as you get into Act 3, this build is complete. Like, it's always online from Act 1, gets big power creeps in Act 2, but yeah, this one, as soon as you get into Act 3, because you get that augment, that's when this build goes so hard. Now, here is the hidden source of my build and why it works so powerful. So at rank 1, I take Masterful Display. Whenever the character's single shot deals damage to characters other than the main target, they gain 5 ballistic skill until the end of combat. So what this does is, say you shoot 1 target and then it chains and hits 3 more, that's plus 15 ballistic skill, and this will keep stacking over the course of combat. So we take Masterful Display, and then we'll be able to take at the next level Psychic Barrage, so that means that when we use Psychic Powers on enemies that are more than 6 cells, we get ballistic skill bonus damage, and because we had 200 ballistic skill in there, that's a good plus 20 that's going to come in from that, and you can even get that even more as you get higher. If you buff your ballistic skill up to 400, that's another plus 40 base going in there. Then we start picking up some of the soldier damage talents, which are universal talents, which will apply to both your arc rifles and to your Sanctified Staff. After the soldier deals damage to 3 different enemies, soldier gets a ballistic skill bonus extra damage, which is going to get stacked up for Masterful Display. We take Psychic Barrage because that will also boost us. Leaf Precision is going to be useful for the first shot of combat, so each turn the first single attack the user makes scores a critical hit and deals 50% more damage, so this is going to be very useful for setting us up. We get Hammer of the Emperor, so that means either on the extra turn as well as the main turn, or even a finest out turn, we can use this to get an exceptional boost in damage. And this will scale from our Psyker Psi rating and our resolve. So this is going to be very powerful, and it does apply to the whole party. I take Death Dealer, actually, so we can get another free attack in here. So this is going to be quite useful. Whenever the character kills an enemy in a round, that character immediately makes an additional attack against a close enemy. They can attack with the same weapon if possible, using whatever attack costs the least AP. This attack does 30% base damage with a plus 10 damage per difficulty tier for enemies done. But again, this is just to get more attack economy out early. We also get stack in the deck, so whenever Master Tactician spends tactical advantage stacks and abilities, the critical damage dealt by the Master Tactician increased by 1% for every stack until the end of turn. Yeah, this makes your arc rifle incredibly deadly. Your arc rifle be doing 5k shots as well, so you don't even need to worry about the big damage numbers from your staff. It's also when I take more bliss skill and fired up, so each attack will increase our critical damage by 1%. It's a shame that you can't crit with psych staffs other than pyromancy staffs, because yeah, on this build, if you could on crit with that Wrath of the Emperor, that would be insane. Yeah, further is going to be helpful to set us up, so you apply linchpin to yourself, you apply inspire to yourself, then you hit further, and then yeah, you're good to go. You can apply them twice to double loop them, but yeah, I try not to do that initially, but it is something you can do if you have the AP. More intelligence. Brink of Death means that, yeah, when enemies are below 50% wounds, we get a nice 12% buff. You won't see that too much, but it is useful for a follow-up. Calculated resolve. Until the end of combat, the user gains 2 resolve for each critical hit scored if they have an augment in the cortical insertion, which we do. So yeah, no, free resolve. We then get some lore warp coming in. We also get degraded defense, so that means as we do damage, we will keep increasing damage. Like I said, I was using alacrity with the MK augment for soldier to like turbo stack our agility, because each shot in the burst fire, because you normally make another 6 attacks there. Yeah, it was giving me a lot of agility, and I was getting up to like 300 agility from self buffs, but the problem was I started killing allies, so you need allies not to be within 3 cells of you, so do keep that in mind. Lore warp is pretty good. Enough bullets for everyone increases your second attack based on your agility, so the more agility you have, the more this does, so it's just useful to gain up some extra damage. Slum of Heroes will help you stack some psi rating, because stuff like Psyker's Breastplate and Ghost Helm are nerfed, so you can't abuse them as much as you used to do. More intelligence, more perception, more Medicae. Vital Points is going to be exceptionally powerful, because it will double your critical modifiers to your arc rifle, which does include degraded defense. Yes, it's a chance, but yeah, you're going to see quite a big bit here. So you're going to see quite often that's coming in with extra damage. I also take Hymns of Hatred, so all of the critical hits also increase our critical damage. Sanctified Slayer helps get us our critical chance up, and yeah, by the time we have our massive resolve stack, every shot will always crit. There's nothing that the enemies can do to stop it. Camaraderie will give us extra bliss skill bonus damage based on all the allies near us, which is why you tend to start them near you. As soon as you have this, that's probably when you're going to want to switch off the MK Soldier, because you want allies near you. You don't want to start killing your allies when you shoot. At the end, I take Residual Charge. The reason I don't take it till the end is Residual Charge can actually reset finishing the job. So if your buffer and your Grand Strategist had attacked some enemies, then gave you the extra turn, if you're doing 0 AP finish the jobs that refresh themselves, yeah, that's really effective. So that's why I take Residual Charge quite late. Perception, Extermination, but yeah, Extermination is going to be very good for just building up damage for every attack. And the very last one I take is Bloody Mess. So anytime the voidborn character scores a critical hit, there's a 10% chance to double the damage. So yeah, if you're arc rifles, this is exceptional, so you will be doing a lot of damage, and that will bring us to the end of the main part of the build. But the thing to keep in mind is, like I said, so this is the mercenary version, and this is a little screenshot from the combat when I was doing that. So I built up to almost 300 ballistic skill from self buffs. I had built my intelligence up to over 1,000, so you can see that my stats are actually pretty high for myself. So I've got over 600% armor. Now, my intelligence divided by 3 would also be the bonus. It would be coming in for your deflection, so that would be much higher on the Rogue Trade build. And like I said, all your stats and all your skills would be higher on the Rogue Trader build, and you would actually be having more temporary HP coming in. Mercenaries obviously don't get all the benefits, so even my psi rating would be 4 higher, so that would be 11. So you can imagine I would be doing a lot more damage. Like I said, what I have shown you in this video, where I'm doing 1 million damage a turn, is the weakest possible version of this build, and that is still the strongest build in the game. So just imagine how fun this is going to be when you do a full run on it. I've been Revan619. If you've appreciated me showing you how to create the strongest self-reliant build in the game, which if you add on buffers is just even stronger, then do pop me a like, and I will see you all in the next video. And as always, all of this information is in a spreadsheet for you to follow along as you play. Bye for now.